All right. So it is 6:01, so we will go ahead and kick off the First Timers program. So first, welcome to the 2022 Chicago Triathlon First Timers program. This is our first clinic, getting the season started. My name is Gillian, and I am one of the coaches of the First Timers program, and I'll tell you a little bit more about me and the program here in a second. But first thing, I just want to let everybody know that these are recorded and they're posted in the Facebook group. And also there is a first timers page where I put the videos and training plans and such. And I put that in the chat. So hopefully you can see the link in the chat, and it will be like livegrit.com/, first timers program. A disclaimer, this is our 9th year and I have not become any more technologically savvy. So if you don't see it in the chat, or if there's anything, if you lose me, my audio or whatever, please just put it in the chat and let me know. Also, talking about the chat, any questions? The whole goal here, and the whole goal of this whole program, is that come August 24th or 25th, that you feel ready and comfortable to do your first triathlon, so that you can really just enjoy the day. So this is all here for you. So please, questions, throw them in there. I will try to answer them as we go along. So you can also always email me if you have some kind of specific question to you, or between now and the next clinic something comes up, feel free to email me. My email is in the chat, and it's triathlon season, so I will make sure to keep an eye out for any first timers questions in my email. So welcome, and so excited to get this started. First order of business is figuring out the here we go. Oh no, we've gone back. All right, see, I didn't lie. You're gonna get a little preview through the whole clinic here. Going all the way back. All right, here we go. So who is your theme for this summer? I just got a note that there's nothing in the chat, so I will make sure to put that in there as we go along. So I will put all the stuff I just said in the chat. But who is your team? So, well, first, you signed up for the Chicago Triathlon. So in my opinion, again, I've working with the Chicago Triathlon and done it myself, for the last 13 years. And in my opinion, it is the best triathlon there is. Not only because it's in Chicago and many of our, backyard yards, but also because it's just so well run. Having done a lot of triathlons, there is not one detail that the Chicago Triathlon team doesn't think through to create a really fun, welcoming, amazing experience for the athletes. And I'm going to talk about some of the things that happen all summer long that make the experience even better. So like I said, one thing about the Chicago Triathlon, it was the ownership of the triathlon moved to Super Tri last year, which is an amazing, amazing thing. So if you haven't heard of Super Tri, look them up. One of the really, really cool things that's coming this year that has never happened before is that the afternoon of Sunday, there is going to be a pros race that takes place in Chicago that you'll be able to watch, and they're really cool. So look up Super Tri. They are now the ones that are running the Chicago Triathlon, which is a really cool addition to the triathlon. So I am Gillian. An organization called Live Grit Soars. And I will keep this very brief, but I started the First Timers program with the Chicago Triathlon in 2015, when I at the time owned a triathlon store called Live Grit. The triathlon store no longer exists. So when we get to gear, we'll talk about some other great places you can get gear. But we decided to kind of shift our focus, and now our whole goal at Live Grit Stores, which is a nonprofit, is to introduce as many youth in Chicago to this amazing sport of triathlons. This was all born out of, and I'm going to tell this very quick story because again, over the years, I've heard that it is helpful to hear. My first experience with a triathlon is exactly what we're trying to prevent with this program and why this program was started. Much like everybody here, I signed up for my first triathlon. It was in Rockford in a little pond, so a little bit different. But I showed up on race day having never been in open water, having never done one of the sports at a time, not really having Googled or watched any videos. And needless to say, my first triathlon experience lasted about 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes, about 30 seconds. I wore my wetsuit for the first time on race day. I got into the water, and I was pretty sure that I, was having some kind of medical emergency. Turns out, what I've learned over time, it was just a panic attack. And now I've learned to swim through, my own, whenever I get in the water, I just have this moment of panic, but I've learned to swim through it, and now have, swam the San Francisco Bay and such. But I tell that story because that is what we're trying to do here. This is not necessarily, the training aspect of it. This is really the mental aspect of triathlons, and making sure that you feel 100% prepared on race day. So there are no surprises, and you can just really enjoy the day and love this sport as much as I do, and as much as your 5,500 friends that are also going to be doing it with you love it. So that's that picture there is the rest of the team. Your team is also all of the Chicago and beyond triathlon community. It's really a great sport that has such a great community. And especially here in Chicago, there's some really cool things. We'll talk about like Ohio Street Beach and things like that, that really, if you want to get involved in community and meet more people, there's a lot of opportunities there. So that's who everybody is. Also, so if you ask me a question that is specifically race logistics related, I will probably share that question with the Chicago Triathlon team. I'm better for answers on, what do I wear? Where can I swim? Things like that. But I will provide some contact information at the end for everybody, so any questions can get answered. So, done with the introductions. Let's get into Triathlon 101. So again, goal here today is just to give you a big picture understanding of what a triathlon is. Some of you coming in with more information. Some of you, we're just like, whatever, I'll sign up and then figure this out. So wherever you are, hopefully some of this information is helpful, but please guide me with your questions. And I already saw one up there about wetsuits, and we will be talking about wetsuits. So in case you didn't read the fine print, what did you sign up for? So if we have any super sprinters in here, well, first, let's back it up. Triathlon has 3 sports, swim, bike, run, and that is the order that it goes. You swim, you bike, and then you run. We often say there's also a 4th sport, which are the transitions. So going from swim to bike, and then bike to run. And we'll talk about, and there'll be a whole clinic on transitions in July. And we'll talk about, what you need to know for that. But if you signed up for the super sprint, you're going to be doing 0.23 a mile of a swim, 6.2 miles on the bike, and then a 1.5 mile run. This is the race that takes place on Saturday up at Foster Beach. If you're doing the sprint, you're going to be doing 0.47 of a mile in the swim, a 15-mile bike, and then a 3.1 miles run. And then international is double the sprint. So that's going to be 0.93 of a mile of the swim, 24.8 miles on the bike, and then 6.2 miles on the run. So starting right now, the one thing I want to say to all of you first timers, because for the last 9 years, I hear people say this. I don't, for the next, whatever it is now, 16 weeks, I don't want to hear I'm just doing sprint, or I'm just doing the super sprint, or even, I just did an Olympic. You are doing a triathlon, which a very small percentage of the population has even thought about and considered doing. So you're not just doing anything, you're doing something amazing. And also one of the things to think about with triathlons is you can go up to, there's, you've probably heard of like the Ironman, and then, there's ultras and everything. But each one of those distances comes with their own challenges. As somebody who likes, at a more, I guess, and I will call it for myself, leisurely pace, but longer, the sprint is pretty much the hardest thing that I have ever done in my life. So every distance has its own challenges. So putting that out, so when I ask, when I see you out at the beach and I'm like, what distance are you doing? So I know something. It is not that I'm just doing something. You are doing something that's amazing. So those are the distances. Talk about the course. Again, you may or may not have looked at this before you signed up. So this is specifically the Saturday race or Sunday race. Sorry, the sprint and international or Olympic. So international and Olympic, no matter what triathlon you're doing, are used interchangeably. But Saturday's race is up at Foster Beach. I don't have a map of it, but there is one on the Chicago Triathlon website. But this is Sunday's race. So this takes place downtown. So it's all along the lakefront, obviously. So you see the lake. Things to note about the map if you go onto the web, if you pull it up. So this orange area up here on kind of the top of the map is the transition area. So that is what you're going to think about is your home base. It's where you're going to go before the race. It's where you're going to go between the swim and the bike. It's where you're going to go between the bike and the run. And it's where you're going to go to pick up your stuff after the race. So that orange area is your home base. And you're always going to go back to the same place. The swim here. So this is, if you've been down on the lakefront, you have the river walk. And then you will have like the yacht club, and this is like right by the yacht club up in a green grassy area, and I'll have some pictures. So we're gonna go through the map, and then I'm going to show you so you can visualize if you've never seen the triathlon, just some pictures to kind of paint a better picture. So the swim start is actually going to be down at Balboa. So that is, you'll see a green S. So that's where the swim start is. If you are doing the international distance, you are actually you're gonna get into the water, and we're gonna talk about how you're gonna get into the water. And you're going to swim south about 380 yards. So the aquarium is down here. So you're gonna be swimming towards the aquarium for about 380 yards. You're gonna do a 180-degree turn, and you're gonna head north, back up towards the transition area. If you're doing the sprint, you get in the water and you're just going to head north. And you're just going to head north. So you're not going to be making any kind of turn. Once you get, there will be a swim exit. And again, I have pictures of this where it is a very well-staffed race. So there'll be no questions of where you're going. A big, arch and staircases going out of the water. You'll get out of the water, and then there's actually a little bonus to this triathlon. There's about a 450-yard, walk, run from your swim exit back to the transition area. And so that's get back to transition. And I'm going to get through, and just great questions coming in. We get through the whole map, and then we'll go back to the questions. Then you're back in the transition area. Let's see. Let me go forward. Oh, here we go. A little bit closer. So see the swim start, see the transition. So the orange is the transition area, but that's going to be your swim. And then after you're done with the swim, that's when you go to the bike. So you're coming in on the south side of transition. To go out on the bike, you're going to go on the north side of transition. Again, it's all going to be marked. It'll say like swim in, bike out, bike in, run out. So you'll know exactly where to go. But you're going to go, the bike course goes north on Lakeshore Drive. So let's see, I think I have it here. Yep. So this, the little on the left here, this is a picture of the bike course. So now if you're doing the sprint, you are going up to Hollywood. You're turning around at Hollywood and coming back down to the transition area. If you're doing the international, you're doing the same thing. You're going all the way up to Hollywood, turning around, coming back south, and then you are going to go on this little windy road of Lower Wacker, and then there's like a bus lane that goes down with Lower Wacker, and that's going to be the second portion of your bike course. One interesting thing to note that everybody always talks about is that you're going to be riding on the southbound lanes of Lakeshore Drive. So it'll be totally closed off to traffic. And hopefully, and I'll walk through this again during the bike, but you're actually going to be riding north on the most west lanes. And then you're going to ride south on the most eastern lanes of Lakeshore Drive. And the reason why this matters is because usually we ride on the right and pass on the left. But in the first half of the bike course, you ride on the left and you pass on the right. Again, we will talk about all of this as the race day gets closer, and it makes sense when you see it and you start riding it. But I just want to point that out because it always, like, I always get the question. Somebody told me, like, you pass on the other side. And that is true, and there's a reason, but it makes total sense why that is. So that's the bike. Okay, so we have this, so this is the Lower Wacker. Same thing, you're gonna come back in on the bike on the north side of transition. It'll be marked, you can't get lost. One thing to note is if you're doing the sprint, you just have the 180-degree turn. 180-degree turn. If you're doing the international, it's going to be, that second half is a little bit more technical, as you can see, a little few more curves and such. The good thing is, what I love about this triathlon is, as they say, there's 5,000 plus people. It never feels like, in my opinion, that there are 5,000 people out there. It's done, the way that it's paced is so good that you're not going to be, on the bike course feeling crunched, feeling like you can't ride your ride or anything like that. So it makes it really fun. All right, and then we have the run. Pretty straightforward. You're going south on the lakefront path. So you'll see here that this first yellow dot down just south of the aquarium, that is the turnaround for the sprint. So that's Waldron Drive. In case you want to go out and run it, it's basically from the yacht club to Waldron Drive, and then up, and then it finishes on Columbus Drive. So that's where the finish line and Finish Line Festival will be. The National goes down to 31st Street and turns around and goes back up and finishes on Columbus Drive. So pretty straightforward on that. Let's see. All right. Before we get to how it all works, I'm going to take a quick pause here, see what questions there are. I see some gear questions that I will answer. So the one specifically related to the course, one is, are these, can you swim the Chicago Triathlon swim before race day? And you cannot, you can't swim that particular part of, you can't swim there, because they have the boats and such. But you can swim at Ohio Street Beach, which I'm going to talk about. That's where the open water swims are going to be and things like that. But fortunately, you can't swim the swim of the Chicago Triathlon before race day. But I always say, if you can swim at Ohio Street Beach, you can swim at the Chicago Triathlon swim. It is almost more, it's almost always more wavy there. So that's why I really encourage, and I will say this over and over and over again, the more you can get in the water, the better. And the more you can get into open water, the better. If you can get to Ohio Street Beach, that is fantastic. If you're not in Chicago or whatnot, getting into lakes, getting into anything with a little bit of chop, just so, hopefully you experience, conditions that could happen on race day. But no, you can't swim that part. And then there's a question about the race course being on Strava, and I am sure it is. I will look that up and post that in the Facebook group, and I'll post it in the Facebook group. If you don't have Facebook, because I totally understand, and I say, I'm going to do this in Facebook, just send me an email and I will personally just email it to you. So fortunately, Facebook is the best way. We've figured out how to have kind of a community. So let's see. And then are there mile markers? Yes, there are mile markers. There will be mile markers both on the bike and on the run, so you'll know where you're at and how far you have to go. So there'll be big signs. How exactly often? I mean, I feel like I think the run is at least every mile. I don't know that that's what it will be on the bike, but it's enough for you to kind of track yourself. Okay. All right, I'm gonna keep rolling because I think I'll answer some of these questions as we go along. So how does it all work? All right, so I talked about transition. This is your home base. This is a picture of the transition area. You can see lots of bikes, but it's this big grassy area with a ton of racks. One of the very good things, and one of the things that was important when we created the first timers program and over the years have evolved it, is that the first timers, you get a good rack placement. And by that, I mean, where the first timer rack is, going to be someplace that is easy to find. So as you can see, this is, I think this was last year, 2 years ago, wave 42. That means there's at least 42 other racks. So you're going to have a number on your bib, and this may change slightly, but generally this is how it's going to work. A number on your bib is going to correspond to a rack. So you can see this is 5180 to 5309. That's where you're going to put your bike. I'm going to go through, we are going to have a whole hour-long plus clinic here in July. So enough time for you to practice that. We'll talk about how you rack your bike and things like that. But this is where you're going to have an area. This is where you're going to put all of your stuff. And this is where you're going to come back to during T1. So you'll hear this terminology. T1 means the transition between swim and bike. And T2 means the transition between bike and run. So when you get your time at the end of the race, you will have a time for T1 and T2. So we'll break it down. It says it took you 5 minutes to go from, swim to bike or whatever. It took you 13 minutes to go. And, we always say this is one of the easiest places to cut your time down. But for your first time around, what we always say is, you'd rather go out there with both of your socks on than rush through it and try to shave off a couple seconds. Or one of our coaches one year, he got on the bike still wearing he had like wetsuit shorts, and he was still wearing those on the bike. And he said it was the longest bike ride he ever took. So So this is what transition looks like. So after transition, the morning of, you're going to walk from the transition area down to the swim start. Now, the swim start of the Chicago Triathlon last year, 2 years ago, actually changed to a time trial start. So what that means, instead of everybody, all, whatever, 100 people, 50 people in the wave getting into the water at once and kind of mass starting, it's basically going to be somewhere between 3 and 5 people at a time are going to time trial start. So there'll be somebody there that will say, you'll line up behind these cones and then they'll say go, and you'll go. And basically what they have is staircase that goes into the water. You can kind of see it here, and another picture you'll see it better. And you're going to go down the staircase, get in the water, and then take off, whether you're going right or left, depending on which race you're doing, take off from there. Now, I showed this picture to show you do not need to dive into the water. I think this was one of Chicago's Triathlon's actual pictures, so I think it was, supposed to look all snazzy. But you do not need to dive into the water. You can jump into the water. You can slowly lower yourself into the water. Like, whatever it is, whatever makes you feel comfortable is totally fine. But you're going to hit the water and then start swimming. So the swimming, I see some questions, so hopefully I'll answer them here. I'm going to show this picture. I'm going to show this picture, and well, not that. So the swim is along the shoreline. So that's really good, because you are going to have the shoreline to help you keep in a straight line. If you're going closer to it, you need to turn yourself. If you're going headed out to Lake Michigan, then you need to turn yourself. So the shoreline can be something that you use for sighting. And so you'll see in this picture, you have boats out there, and all of those are lifeguards. There are lifeguards along the wall. Let's see, I think I had this other picture. Let's see. Yep. So you'll have it will be lined the whole way with people that are there to help you. And all you have to do, if you need some assistance in the water, is to just raise your hand or swim over to the boat or kayak or surfboard or wall. And that's fine. And here's the greatest part about triathlon and swimming, is that it is perfectly okay to grab onto a boat if you need a break. You can hold on there for a minute or 90 seconds or whatever it is to catch your breath, to get more comfortable, especially knowing this is your first triathlon. There are, even the best prepared, there's going to be some nerves. It is totally fine to do that. And the only thing you can't do is have the boat take you to the swim out. Then your day's probably over. But totally fine to hold on to the boats. There's no limit on, you can only, hold on to 2 boats. Whatever it is that you need to do is fine. And last year we had a lot of questions around, time cutoffs for the swim and stuff like that. And so many that, that I finally asked the head of the triathlon. There are, and we'll talk about these things later, there's a ref, and I asked him to come on and give his, the official answer. And what he said is that in all of the years that he's been the head ref of this triathlon, or official, I don't know, whatever they call it, as long as you are, in some way progressing forward, you're holding on, taking a minute break, and you keep going, whatever it is, they have never pulled people out of the water. The only time, and I would say this too, in the 9 years again that I've done this, the only, obviously things happen. Something happened for me, I just had a panic attack. Those things happen, and then you come back and you try again. But the only people that I've seen really struggle, where it just wasn't going to be their day, were people that had never gotten into open water, I always say this too. It is only April 24th, and you are here today, which means that you're excited about this. You're ready to go. So I am not worried about a single person on this call or watching this video anytime before April 23rd or August 23rd. So don't worry about the cutoffs. I mean, you're here, so you're going to be fine. And I know some people are really like data numbers driven. So we will talk about the actual schedule and stuff as we go along. So if you want to know the like published cutoffs, they are there. But as long as you're moving forward, it is very unlikely that that you're not going to make it to the finish line. So hopefully that calms some nerves. So this is the swim. See, I'm going to do one more swim and then I'm going to look because there were a lot of swim questions. This is the swim out. So as you can see, the same stairs you came in, you're coming out, not the same stairs. They are stairs like the other stairs, but farther north. This is how you're coming out. As you can see, there will be volunteers there helping you both out of the water. And then also, if you need it, sometimes, and if there's enough volunteers, we'll help you like unzip your wetsuit. Now, so there are some races where there are what's called like the wetsuit helpers or whatever, where you literally like lay down on the ground, they rip it off. This race is not one of those races. So one of the things that you're going to practice between now and August 24th is getting your wetsuit off. But my suggestion would be like, let's focus first on getting the wetsuit on, which I think is much more difficult. And but if you know how, easy. And swimming in it. And then, but yes, you will have to get your own wetsuit off. Okay, I'm going to pause and see what swim questions we have. I'm going to talk about wetsuits when we talk about gear, so I'll come back to that. But question about contacts in the lake. They do make prescription goggles, and they've gotten so much better. As somebody who wears contacts, they are so much better. And so, like, I know, like, TYR makes them. Like, if you just Google prescription goggles, they make them. I think there's a fair number of like eye doctors that will sell them. You can definitely do that. It's really going to come down to so the question is, what do you do with you wear contacts or glasses? Personal preference. I mean, I will be transparent. I do wear my contacts and wear goggles over them. I always, though, then have extra pairs of contacts in my transition area as to whether I got, water in my eyes or lost one or whatever, because I could not ride a bike without them. The other thing is that if you wear glasses, and there's going to be a special table at the swim exit, so right here, where you can put your glasses so that when you get out of the water, you can grab them and put them on. So that's one thing as well. So hopefully that answers that question. As I showed in kind of the picture, there are lots of people in the water to help. I'm pretty sure the majority of the lifeguards with the Chicago Park District are here that morning. So lots of people. And like I said, they're here to help, so if you get their help, it does not, do not hesitate to hold on to a boat, the wall. The wall, we'll talk about it at the swim, why you got to think a little bit about the wall, but we'll talk about that later. There's a question about the chaos of the swim. And, I think that's one of the biggest things that people hear about triathlons, and is that it's just like mass chaos at the swim. Good thing about the time trial start, that has totally changed things. I wouldn't have said it was chaotic before, because the amount of space they give and the size of the waves, it was pretty balanced. But having it now as a time trial start really thins out how many people are right around you. But the thing about swimming, and it isn't a confined space, is there are people, and you are going to swim up next to somebody, or somebody's going to swim up behind you. You know, I have always been in the mindset that, you know, one, nobody, and, you know, I'm not winning the race anyways, but the swim is nobody wins the race necessarily in the swim, you know, and that it is, you know, the goal of the triathlon, again, in my experience, in my opinion, is to get to the run feeling as good as possible. And so the swim, you want to think about the swim being a strong effort and a good effort, but you don't want to use every last piece of your energy at the swim, because that's going to make for a really long, not very fun day for the rest of it. So I guess I say all of that to say, swimming and I feel somebody's foot, I'm going to take the few seconds to like go, you know, to move myself out of the way of them. And, you know, and I would rather do that than, you know, kind of go forward. And so I do not think you are going to feel that the Chicago Triathlon is chaotic. There are triathlons that I might put in that category. This is not one of them, in my opinion. And not just because I love the triathlon, but because it's true. Let's see. Let's see. I just want to see. All right. So yeah. So we talked about this was for Sunday's race. Saturday's race, the super sprint is similar. The difference with Saturday's race and the super sprint is that it is a beach start. So you run off the beach and then it's going to be a U shaped. But everything as far as how, you know, just kind of things to think about, people in the water, is exactly the same. And one of the other good things about, you know, the super sprint is because of that, some portion of the swim you can actually touch, you know, because you have to get far enough out into the water. But same things to think about with the super sprint. All right. So here's that 450-yard run. And I'm gonna get going through some of this so we can get to the gear stuff, which I know is, you know, just kind of the initial gear stuff and then the training. So this is the bike course. It's on Lakeshore Drive, as you can see here. So, you know, it's not super crowded. You're gonna have more than enough room. One thing is, you know, I didn't realize this until I did the Chicago Triathlon, is that, you know, for Chicago, like Lakeshore Drive is actually can be there's a few hills. And then, you know, headwinds can be something that's pretty real. So just, you know, the more you can ride, theme is the more you can ride your bike, the more you can swim, the more you can run, the better. But this is the bike. This is a picture of the bus causeway that I talked about. That's only for the international. Yep. Let's see. All right. And then here we have the run. So Lakeshore Drive, or the lakefront path, you can see. So I put this on there. We put this on here for the aid. There's the water stations. Historically, it's been Gatorade. I have not heard anything different, but if I hear something different, I will be sure to let everybody know. Let's see. And then as we talked about, the finish line goes up Columbus Drive. Really good job making it, you know, it's pretty cool. And then this is where the finish line festival will be. Okay. So I'm going to come back to these pictures when we talk about gear, because I'm going to point out some of the gear. So I only put this very quickly up so that people can get an idea of what the schedule might look like. The international race goes first, and then the sprint race. It is an early morning no matter what, but it might be a little bit earlier if you're doing the international, given that race historically has started around 6 a.m. So you have to have all of your stuff and be ready to go in transition by 5:45. ish. Again, we will get this exact schedule at some point and we will talk through it. The good thing about the sprint is that you don't have to be there at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. There will be another time later in the morning, not that much later, because more closer to the 6:37 range, where you can come and put your stuff, and then transition closes, and the sprint race has traditionally started around 8 a.m. Like I said, like you see last athlete exits the water, things like that. But again, I trust me that you are going to be fine. And the way you'll know when your start time is, everybody, like I said, you're going to be given a wave number, and you're on a swim cap with a certain color that corresponds to your wave. And then you'll know, they'll publish, this wave goes off at 8:58 a.m. And we'll talk more about that as it gets closer. Okay, so all you need to do in order to do this thing is have a little grit. So a goal, some right tools, some inspiration, some training. So what's your goal? Well, obviously you signed up for the Chicago Triathlon, but more importantly, why did you sign up for the triathlon? And that's what's going to get you to the finish line. That's what's going to get you through the hot days, the early mornings, all of that stuff. So really thinking about, what is it that this year, what goal is it for you that's important? And that's going to be your motivator. So the right tools. Okay, I know this is what everybody is really waiting for. So the gear, and this is just, so the biggest thing, and even, and I may hate to say it, it might be why I even had a store, and it was hard, because obviously we sold a lot of things, and everything does have a purpose. It does either make you faster, it makes you easier, or it makes it more comfortable. But to do a triathlon, you actually don't need that much. So we've really broken it down to what are the things that you do need. So starting with the swim. So we're going to go try something to wear. The most basic thing, you need something to wear. Ideally, it's something you can wear to swim in, to bike in, and to run in without changing your clothes. You may add a layer or something, but you don't want to, and it really is just not possible to have to change your clothes. So they make triathlon clothes. And I'm going to go to pictures in a second here and show it. Let's just go back. So triathlon clothes, you can swim, you can bike, you can run. They are made to be up. Good picture. So our friend Todd here is wearing a triathlon kit. The shorts, so they're stretchy. They look like bike shorts, but the padding in them is going to be really thin, just enough to get you through the bike comfortably, but not enough to, swimming in bike shorts is not a lot of fun. It holds a lot of water. And then the shirt, I would say if you're going to invest in a piece of triathlon clothing, my suggestion would be the shorts. Those are the most important thing. Those are the things you're going to value the most. The top, the shirt he's wearing, it dries quickly. You could technically swim in it. It's form fitting, so it would, it's not going to create drag. And, so it's great, but you could also, what I traditionally, wear is triathlon shorts. I swim in a sports bra, and then I put some kind of shirt over top, or tank top, depending on what it is. The weather and whatnot, for the bike and such, and then a wetsuit. So that's triathlon clothing. You can Google it. There's lots of companies, on the web page that, that I'm just going to drop in right now so I don't forget. Let's see, I'm going to just, on the first timers page here, I have a list of some places to check out. But if you Google triathlon clothing, you'll see a lot. Unfortunately, it is the world of brick and mortar is a lot tougher. there is a great store in the suburbs called Urban Tri Gear. It's in Westmont. I hope I got that right, the place near Naperville. And Urban Tri Gear, they are fantastic. Tell them you're part of the First Timers program, and they will be so helpful. But if you want to actually try on stuff, that's a good place to go. So for the swim, the other thing that you need, but you will be given is, let's go back, is a swim cap. So as you can see, all these people are wearing swim caps. You will get one that you have to wear, but I do recommend practicing in one before race day if you don't typically wear swim caps. It's something you want to get used to. So getting a swim cap. And the other thing that was on the list are goggles. You need goggles. And as you can see in these pictures, all of these athletes are wearing, quote unquote, open water swim goggles. And now really all that means is that they're not the little tiny race goggles that you'll see, like swimmers in pools wearing, where they sit really into your eye sockets. And the reason that you want something with a little bit of suction, maybe polarized, is because, the suction part, you might be in waves. You might, have a hand of somebody, an athlete, like hit your goggle. And these are going to stay on better. They also have more peripheral vision, so you can see better as you're trying to sight. So really, you don't need to like search open water swim goggles. Most goggles you will see are them. If you go to like whatever sporting goods store, but just thinking like you don't want the super tiny ones that sit in your sockets, eye sockets. So that's that. So now the question of, let's see, go to wetsuits. So do I need a wetsuit? And I know this is the big, it is not mandatory that you wear a wetsuit. And the question is more, do you want to wear a wetsuit? And I'm going back to the picture of, if you don't know what a wetsuit is, you'll see these two athletes are wearing wetsuits. The reason that what wetsuits do is they make you more buoyant. For 99% of us, that is the most important piece of a wetsuit. So if you're not a college, high school swimmer, most of us swim and our hips drop into the water. Wetsuits keep you on top of the water like this, which makes swimming easier. The other thing about a wetsuit is because it is buoyant, it gives you the confidence, gives you a feeling of safety. I know those are the two reasons I wear a wetsuit: to keep me more horizontal on the water, making swimming easier, and just making me feel more confident in the water. They do keep you warmer. If you are out there in May swimming, the water comes into the wetsuit, and then your body heats the wetsuit up, heats the water up, and they do keep you warmer. And then the last thing is, for again, a small portion of the swimming population, they do actually make you faster, but that's because of the buoyancy and being on top of the water. And by make you faster, we're talking seconds, and things like that. So that would be my least important thing of it. So no, you don't have to, but if, and there are some people that just adamantly have no interest and feel confident in the water without it, and that's great. But if you have any kind of hesitation in the water, I would 100% recommend trying it. We're going to talk about the open water swim clinics here in a minute, and they are a great place to rent a wetsuit. I believe, again, that store Urban Tri Gear I talked about comes down and rents wetsuits. It's like $25, but you can try it out. Now, you will have to get there early because there's not a lot of people that rent wetsuits anymore. So, but that's one place you could try it out. You can rent wetsuits for the day of the race. I would, again, recommend And I'm giving you the tip now, call Urban Tri Gear like now and see if they're taking reservations. Because again, they don't have an endless amount of wetsuits. But if you just want to go for it and like get the wetsuit, again, lots of companies, like you can see Roka here. Again, on that website, I have just a list of a couple wetsuit companies that you can check out. Biggest thing is making sure it's an open water swimming wetsuit. Open water swimming wetsuits are very different than, they are not dive suits. Dive suits have a different purpose to keep you under the water. And they are not like surf suits, which really is actually the inside of the wetsuit. So a wetsuit is made of like neoprene rubber, which is very flexible, but also very buoyant. And then the inside has a lining. Then that's typically what just the surf suits are made out of. So you want to make sure it's an open water swimming wetsuit. This is also where if you have a question, just shoot me an email and I'm happy to kind of look at what you're looking at and tell you if it's the right thing. Okay. Let me see. I think swimming has the most questions. And the next clinic is we're only talking about swimming. So we'll talk more about all of these things. Let's see. Okay, some great questions. So we talked about the triathlon clothing or whatever you're wearing, and the wetsuit. You wear your triathlon clothing underneath the wetsuit. So that's what, the morning of, you'll put your tri clothes on. When you get down and you're, 30 minutes from your wave going, then you'll put your wetsuit on over your tri suit. And then when you get out of the water, you just take off the wetsuit and you're ready to go. Let's see. So that's great question here. There was a question about what kind of footwear do you wear from the swim exit, so on this picture, to the transition area. So you're not going to be wearing anything. So once you get into the water, you're not going to have anything with you other than basically what you have: your swim cap, your goggles, your wetsuit, and your timing chip. So if you look at this athlete's ankle, you'll see a timing chip. So you're not going to have anything. But the good thing is they carpet it all the way. So you're not going to be running on the concrete or anything like that. And then the carpet will go right into the grass. So, if it has rained, you might have, might get muddy or whatever, but you're not going to wear anything from the swim exit to the transition. And we'll talk later at the transition clinic and stuff of what you might want to wear from the transition to the swim start the morning of, but we'll talk about that later. As far as the transition area and dropping your gear, you can drop your bike the day before. We will talk about that later, but you cannot drop anything else other than your bike. And then being in the first, so there's a question about the swim wave for the first timers. So being in the first timers program, that is one of the benefits, is that you are in a wave with only other first timers. And so what we really like about that is that, everybody around you is kind of in your same situation. So it's just kind of a fun atmosphere. Everybody, is I guess helping each other out, as much as you can. It's a fun thing. As far as where the first timers wave goes, it really, it's varied across the board, but and every year things like change as far as who goes first or last or whatever. So, it's just so hard to, it changes every year, but you will have more. If you'll have more than enough time. And also looking at the schedule, some people are like, you'll be like, whoa, that's like an hour and 15 minutes or whatever from transition closing till my time going. I promise you, time goes very fast. You will even line up to get in the water at least like 30 minutes ahead of time. That 30 minutes goes by so quickly. So the schedule sometimes gets people and they're like, oh, that's going to be so late, or it feels like so much time. I promise when you're there, it does not feel like any time at all. As far as a swim cap, you do have to wear it unless you have some exception or reason that, you don't, you're uncomfortable with it or whatever. But yeah, yes, the swim caps are mandatory. But if you have a question about that, that's one where I would say, reach out to the Chicago Triathlon, and they will always try to, make accommodations. And some people have swim caps they like to wear, and you could double up. You can put one underneath if there's a reason that you want to wear another one. So yes, let's see. Sorry, just reading. So the question, so I think I answered the wetsuit question, but just to kind of reiterate, you do not have to have, there's no mandatory wetsuit. You do not have to wear, as you can see, this athlete is not wearing a wetsuit, but there may be reasons you want to, but it's a totally personal opinion, and you have time to figure that out. And then you wear your tri-suit or whatever it is you decide to wear underneath. Some people do wear a swimsuit and then put bike shorts on over top of the swimsuit, and that's fine. I mean, the reason why sometimes the reason why we go to triathlon shorts first is just like the friction between wearing multiple layers of things, but that's fine too. But we'll talk more about some of the alternatives if you just really don't want to invest into like the triathlon clothing or whatever. The water temperatures, what are the water temperatures in August? And that is a tough question, depends on the year, but I would say generally in the, again, 13 years that I've been doing this, there was only one year that I would say it was really cold, I think it was in like the high 50s or something. But other than that, say August gives it enough time to warm up. So yeah, so you'll be fine. I would say, when we talk about warmth of the wetsuit, that's usually more for the training aspect of June can be pretty cold. May obviously is cold. Chicago, we could have random cold Julys. So it's more in the training than the actual race day. And somebody asked about chlorine and wetsuits. So basically, can you take your wetsuit into the pool? What I would say is that okay to do every once in a while. If you want to try it out for the first time in a pool, that's fine. I wouldn't do it all the time because yes, chlorine does eat away at the neoprene rubber. Can be fairly delicate over time. So if you're going to swim in a pool with a wetsuit, make sure you rinse it off very well with just normal water after you get it out. And always with a wetsuit, rinse the inside and the outside, and then I would dry it inside out because the inside is the one that holds the most amount of water. Remember I said it's kind of that surfing material. And so, so make sure you rinse it with a lot of water, and then hang it or lay it to dry. So hopefully that answers that. Let's see. So there's a question about non-binary waves and scoring categories. I will have to check into that. So I will that in Facebook as well. It's a great question, and also address it at the next clinic. So again, with the new some little things have changed with the Super Tri buying acquiring the triathlon. So I will check into that. And then there's somebody's asking about Swim In as a legitimate company. I've never heard of that company either. But that doesn't mean anything. I closed my store in 2019, so a lot has happened. So I will also look into that. I just haven't personally heard of it. But yeah, so okay. I think if I missed any questions there before we go to bike, let me know. And I'm going to try to wrap up in 10 minutes here because we will, I think the wetsuit situation was the biggest question. But that most people have. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Bike. All you need is a bike. Any kind of bike will do. All it needs is 2 wheels and 2 brakes and 2 pedals. But so that's the one thing. It needs 2 brakes. So you cannot have a fixed gear bike. So like when most of us know it, when we were kids, you'd push back to stop it. You can't have a fixed gear bike, and it can't just have 1 brake. So those are the only qualifications. Any bike will do, especially for your first triathlon. Don't make that the thing that is most difficult for you. But yes, again, makes you faster, makes it easier, makes it more comfortable. There are road bikes, there are hybrid bikes, and then you'll hear about triathlon bikes. The only thing I want to say today is you do not need a triathlon bike. They are very specific. They're made to go straight and fast. You may want one, and that's great, and you can ride. And they do have a purpose, and they're great. But specifically, for this race, you never need a triathlon. I don't own a triathlon bike personally, but yeah. So 2 brakes is all you need. But again, happy to talk through if you have a specific bike question. You do have to wear a helmet. And you have to wear a helmet whenever you are touching your bike, or you will get a penalty. And we will talk about penalties again later. You have to wear a helmet, and it has to be strapped. So if you're walking your bike into transition or out of transition, you need to have your helmet on, and it needs to be strapped. And it needs to be it can't be like it can't be like a skateboard helmet. It needs to be a bike helmet, but that's inside. There's a sticker that says, I think it's CPSC. It's a certification sticker. I guarantee you 99% of the helmets, if you have one, have it in there. But make sure you look for that. And that's the only thing there. And then you need, shoes. You don't have to wear socks. But I think some of these we were like, I don't know, like we coming up with things, but you need shoes and socks. The one other thing we will talk about, in the bike clinic is whether you want like clipless pedals. Again, definitely not necessary, but has a purpose. And then the run is super easy. You need shoes, but sunglasses, you don't have to have sunglasses, but they might be helpful, a hat, something like that. And the other thing that we have on here is a race belt, which is this weird thing. It's not, but it's this thing. I'm trying to find the right picture. So our friend Sarah here is wearing a race belt. So that's the pink thing around her waist. And the thing with triathlon, unlike doing a 5K or whatever, is that you don't have to have your number on you like this throughout the whole race, only during the run. So during the swim, your number is really, it's your swim cap and your timing chip. On the bike, you're going to have a number on your helmet, on your bike, and only on the run do you need your number on the front of you. And this race belt is a very easy way to do that. So you don't have to wear your, like your number on your bike shirt and it's flapping in the wind during the whole bike. I promise it. So there's going to be a course talk the weekend of. They talk about race belts, and inevitably everybody goes and buys one. It's $12 or whatever. But it is it actually serves a purpose and makes things easier. And we'll talk more about that. But do you see race belts or people talking about race belts? That's what they're talking about. Nutrition, we'll talk more about that. Sports watch, bike computer, transition towel, body glide, all those things we'll talk as we kind of start really getting into getting into things. The inspiration, the community. My favorite part of triathlons is, the people you're going to meet and the things, you get to experience by going through this process. So first timers clinics, again, all of them will be posted in Facebook and on that website. Right now, last year's are still up there. So if you just can't wait to hear about the swim or transitions, feel free to watch them. Open water swim clinics. Go to this webpage now, go to Chicago Triathlon's webpage and you'll see a link to it. These are the best thing you can do for your open water swimming and for race day, if you can make them. They are at Ohio Street Beach, which is the beach right by Navy Pier. I think the first one is May 28th, which is a Tuesday. And then they are, for the first time this year, going to have Saturday ones. These are all coached. You'll choose kind of the group you want to be in, whether you're like new to swimming, or they even have like aquathon where you kind of do it on your own, but go to them. They have Gear Watch. This is where they rent wetsuits. And so go register. They do sell out and you pick times. So go check and see if registration is open. And try to go as many as possible. And I will see you down there in person. So that's fun too. So training, first timers program, that's what you're in. With this program, we're going to have, we will put up a 12-week program that starts June 3rd. It is pretty, straightforward. It is, based on time and distances, not, getting into super nitty gritty, like training. There are so many training programs, training plans on the internet. It's like, there are so many. So if you want something more tailored, Google it, or there are lots of cool, amazing teams, clubs around Chicago. And that you, again, like, there's so many different training teams out there. If you want a recommendation or anything about a specific like training team that might be, where you train with them multiple days a week or whatever, again, just send me an email and I'm happy to provide some. There's different charity groups out there that you can join, where it might be, more social kind of thing. I think that list is probably on Chicago Triathlon's website. Saturday mornings at Ohio Street Beach, there are always a ton of people training for the Chicago Triathlon down there. It's a great place to meet people. Just, inevitably you'll be standing there and start talking to somebody that's also doing it. So that is kind of where everybody swims in the city. Though there are lots of other great places to swim along the lakefront. So group bike rides, a lot of the shops in Chicago. So BFF Bikes, I think Johnny Sprockets. There's a handful of the bike shops that do group rides. So I would check some of those out. So that's kind of, a lot of different resources out there. And I'll try to post them on Facebook as I see them. But as we talked about, 12-week training plan there'll be one for the super sprint, the sprint, and the international starting on June 3rd. Right now, though, I love that everybody's here. What I would say is, it's about building the base, working on whatever sport it is that's most difficult for you. So if that's, working on swim technique, or if you're just getting into, walk, running, building that base before you get into having to do, all three sports at one time. So focus on whatever it is that, you're new to biking, whatever it is. That's what I would say to do right now. And doing cross training stuff, strength training stuff, because that's, if you're big, we often, like a lot of like CrossFitters and things like that, that's, won't probably be doing quite as much of that come this 12 weeks. So again, I think the last year's training plans are up on the website, so you can check them out if you want. But as you can see, this is a pretty straightforward, easy to follow, but there's a lot of resources out there. Whew. Okay, sorry, we went over by 10 minutes. Let me check the questions. I think recommendations on bike rentals. That's another one I'm gonna have to follow up with who is still around doing that. I know there was a partner last year, so let me check on that, and I will post something about that as well. I also agree BFF is the best. Great bike shop, great rides. If you haven't heard of it, it's in Bucktown. So the great rides out of there. Yes, and that 57th Street Beach. Yes, so there was a recommendation for swimming at 57th Street Beach. That's a great place. You know, one of the places that we found last year training is behind the planetarium. There's a beach that's like in between the planetarium and the old Meigs Field, like Northerly Island. There's a beach down there that if you want shallower water to start, you can kind of swim along the shoreline. That's a really not crowded at all the times I went. So yeah, there's a lot of great beaches along the lakefront. All right, 15 seconds if I retype your question or copy and paste it if I forgot anything. But if not, the next clinic is May 15th, and it's all about the swim. So we will talk more about what to expect, race day, more about the gear, wetsuits, training, all of that. But I am not seeing any more. Yep. And so there was a question about whether Swim In is a legitimate company to buy a wetsuit. I have never heard of it, but that does not mean anything. So I'm gonna look into it and see. Yeah, because I honestly just have never heard of it, so I don't know one way or another. But we'll certainly post something in Facebook about it. So yeah, any other questions I couldn't answer, I will post in Facebook and try to get them answered. So yes, as far as the recording of this, it'll take me like a day to upload it, and either again will be on Facebook on the LiveGrit First Timers page, or email me at Gillian@livegrit.com, and I will send it to you personally if you don't have Facebook or whatever, or it's just easier that way. So hopefully this was helpful, but I hope everybody feels a little bit better. Congratulations on taking this on. You are doing something amazing. I can't wait to meet everybody. It's going to be an amazing summer, and we'll just keep on going and see each other in a couple of weeks. So, all right. Well, have a good night, everyone.